morning everyone, and thank you very much for joining me on another of my videos. What an absolutely fantastic morning it is. It's a sheer joy and pleasure to be out today, and I'm really looking forward to doing some photography. This is the first scene that I'm going to be photographing today. I'm really excited about it. And what I actually want to talk about throughout this video, the topic of the video, is discussing what drives me in landscape photography. So when thinking about what drives me personally to keep doing landscape photography year after year, and what excites me and motivates me, I really can break this down into 4 different categories. And the first category is just simply the sheer love and enjoyment I get from being outdoors, exploring, and looking for subjects or scenes that really excite me, that resonate with me, and they make me eager and excited to capture them in a photograph. So that's my primary driver in landscape photography and what makes me want to go outside. Now, I love all types of photography, landscape photography. I love photographing at the coast, I love woodlands, mountains, countryside, you name it, I love it. I do maybe have subtle preferences, but I really do love exploring all these areas. And sometimes, of course, I wander off paths if I'm looking through a woodland and so on. But I always try as much as I possibly can to try and leave areas as if I haven't been there. Now, obviously, you may leave subtle footprints and so on, but I really do pay a lot of attention to the landscape and terrain that I'm in, and I really don't want to do any damage. But yeah, that's category 1. I definitely love being out exploring. So let's move on to the second thing that really drives me in landscape photography. So the next thing that I think drives me to do landscape photography, and what I really love about it and get a lot of enjoyment from, is the crafting of the image on location and trying, I guess you could say, to get it as correct as possible in camera. It's something that gives me a lot of pleasure. I really love working on compositions, trying to get the camera settings right, trying to get everything positioned nicely in the frame. And I think the scene that I'm photographing early this morning is a great way to illustrate what I'm talking about there. So with this scene behind me here, it just looks fantastic to me. As I talked about in category 1, it's really caught my interest. I'm excited to capture it and it really appeals to me. To me, this scene has almost got like a timeless quality to it. It just looks beautiful. I don't think it needs any fancy editing. And there's just so many qualities I love about it. It looks timeless. We've got the lovely hills in the background, this fantastic tree here. A lot of character with the broken branch which sits nicely beneath it. And talking about the crafting of the composition, there's a lot of open areas in this tree, and there's a lot of background interest, and I get so much joy just over the fine-tuning of my camera position in terms of height and also horizontal movement to try and line things up the way that I like. Now, others may have a different viewpoint on how they would take this scene, but to me, I just love trying to get certain elements that stand out to me positioned correctly in the frame. So obviously this fallen off branch here underneath the tree, that needs to sit nicely and be pleasing to the eye. We've got a building to the right which I like to position in this little gap. We've got some nice trees above that which I try and position in an open area as much as possible. It's impossible to get them completely in their own space without little elements of the tip of branches touching them, but that's fine. Over to the left, I've got a very interesting, very tall tree which stands high, very high above all the others, positioned in a nice gap. And then just at the top there's a mountain peak off in the distance. Now there's been some wonderful fog this morning. It was really quite thick, and at the moment it's cleared, but there's a bit more light in the scene. So when I captured it earlier, there's actually some mist in the hilltops off in the distance now, but when I was capturing the shot earlier, in these two gaps there was some nice mist as well. So I just love watching the conditions change, getting the shot set up, trying to get everything aligned nicely. And then I've been thinking about the technical details as well, my focal length, the aperture, do I want everything sharp, do I want something soft, thinking about exposure. Now with this scene here, I've got no choice but take in some of the sky, and the sky is obviously quite bright. Even though it's a foggy day, it's quite bright compared to this tree and ground, especially earlier in the morning when there was less light. So I've been thinking about what can I do there, and I may get the shot in one exposure, but I've also taken some bracketed shots as well, so I can use a slightly darker exposure for the sky if I need to. And then it's just thinking about how will that work today. Well, there is absolutely no wind at the moment. I think the forecast said it was going to be like 1 mile an hour. So there's not going to be any problem using a second exposure for the brighter parts of the sky if I need to. But it's just thinking about all of these things, piecing them together. And at this stage, I'm also thinking about the editing of my image as well. And that's what I'm going to talk about in category 3 of what drives me to keep doing landscape photography. But for now, I'll show you this image, and I completely understand and appreciate that everyone's got different tastes, but this type of thing really appeals to me and really excites me, and I've had a lot of joy this morning capturing this scene. So again, I found something which has caught my interest and it's got me excited about capturing a photograph. And it's primarily this log here just in front of me. I'm calling it a log. It's a rather large log. It's a fallen tree obviously at some point, but basically just the trunk of the tree. It's surrounded by some nice autumn colour in the ferns. I like the colour of the moss on it, and I'm quite drawn to a very specific small gathering of ferns just right of centre on the log, which lean over to the left, and the soft light is just catching that nicely at the moment. Then we've got some nice splashes of colour just beyond the log, and I think that contrasts nicely with the hill line in the distance, which isn't really showing any autumn colour. And we've got a nice peak, which I've tried to position centrally in my frame in terms of its left to right positioning. And there's been some nice mist blowing past the scene as well, just catching the tops of the hill line there off in the distance. So quite excited about this one and really keen to capture it as well. I just love the colours in this scene, and again, it's got an almost timeless quality to it, I guess. It's just a scene which you would hope you could return to over the years and it's not going to change too much, and it looks like that fallen log's been here for many years already, so quite excited about the photograph. Now, the third thing that really drives me in landscape photography is the joy that I get from editing my photographs. Here I'm having a fantastic time. I'll have wonderful memories of capturing this photograph today, but when I go to the editing stage, again the memories come back. I'm looking at my image and I'm very much enjoying the process of trying to get that image on my computer screen and finally in print, edited in a manner that it very much reflects what I'm seeing now. Everyone's got a different approach to how they capture and edit their landscape images. There's no rights and there's no wrongs. I maybe talk about what I do, but I'm not saying it's right. But I like to keep my editing very simple. And when I do edit my images, I like to think that the final result is at least 90% of what I've seen here today. So it's digital, of course, it's never going to be an exact 100% replica, but I like to think my images are genuine and very much reflect what I've saw at the moment of capture, and that's how I like to approach my editing. But I really get great joy from editing. I'll be editing this image, you know, could be a few weeks from now, but it'll bring back memories and I'll really enjoy trying to bring it to life. And it's just something that I think is very much part of landscape photography now, shooting digitally, and it's something that I really enjoy. As I've touched on before, I'm thinking of that editing process now as I capture the image and how I'm going to have the contrast and colours in the scene, and I'm really liking the dark wet that's on this log here, and I'm thinking about how that's going to be a really nice feature, and I'm going to make sure when I edit the image I get that looking nice, and obviously the colours as well. I'm also thinking ahead to the cropping as well, and just looking forward actually to editing this image, because it just looks quite timeless, as I say, and it's really caught my interest. But yeah, that's something that drives me in photography, and as simple as I keep my editing, I think if I didn't love editing photographs, it could actually put me off doing landscape photography. I like to spend as little time on a computer as possible, hence trying to capture the image correctly on location. But I do enjoy editing, but I try and keep that time short and just get the scene looking like it was and bringing back those fantastic memories. This fallen tree here really does have so much character, and as I just spend time here, it keeps making me think about time and the passing of time, and there's just so much character here. And as I look across, there's a very small bird, it must only be about this size, moving around the ferns. So obviously nature is very much part of this scene as well, and I'm sure the wildlife like hanging around this fallen tree here too. But it's been so nice to spend some time here, and I just want to finish the video by talking about the fourth thing that drives me in landscape photography, and I think it's a very important thing. It's key to getting better and it's key to keeping you motivated, and that is the process of continual improvement in my landscape photography. I don't think anyone will ever master landscape photography, and we all need to really try and keep improving. That can happen naturally over time. I think to some degree we've all got an eye for composition, but we can develop and improve that. We can learn new techniques, we can just practice. The more photographs we take, the more our compositional skills will hopefully be improving. You can try new techniques in your editing. As I spoke about, I don't like to edit my photographs too much, but there's always subtle changes to technique that we can sort of employ in our own editing. The other thing is regarding compositions themselves. Maybe here today I've just captured this scene, maybe now I could go about thinking, could I improve on that composition? Also, there's the long-term aspect. So I may have a photograph here today that I might be extremely happy with, or maybe only very happy with. And I may think, well, how would this look better to me as the photographer? Would it look better with snow? Would it look better if there was more fog off in the distance? Would I like to come back in spring? So it's not just about improving ourselves and our techniques, but it's also about having a photograph or a scene that we love and trying to improve and take better versions of that. One other thing that I sometimes think about and try to improve for my landscape photography is my actual process of capturing images on location. Is there anything I can do to streamline it and just make it more efficient? One small example of that is that a few months ago now, or actually quite some time ago now, I changed filter system just because I thought it would save time on location, help me capture images a bit more efficiently, and just make my workflow a bit more streamlined and easier for me as the photographer. So there's lots to do to try and keep improving at landscape photography, but this drive to keep improving really does keep me motivated, and I think that's a key part of enjoying landscape photography and doing it for a long period of time. But that's it for this video. I really do hope you've enjoyed watching. As always, I really do appreciate it, so thank you so much to everyone that's watched. And I hope you've liked the images that I've captured today. I'd be interested to know what drives you in landscape photography, what keeps you motivated, what keeps you going out, what keeps you going potentially on long hikes out on those cold days. I think somewhere in there we all need to have a love of landscape photography to keep doing it for a number of years, and I'm sure all of you watching do indeed have that. But as I say, thank you so much, and I really hope I'll see you in my next video.